Hello, and welcome to the SaWGuy podcast.
Like scary movies. What's your favorite scary movie?
Here's Johnny.
We'll tear your soul apart.
The boogeyman is real, and you found him.
Game over, man. Game over.
What do you want?
I want to hear you scream. From the front time, bitch!
Welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. As always, I'm the SaWGuy. Had to go and do my little 10 count over here because we're in episode 10 today, right? Whoever thought we'd make it this far with episode 10? 10 episodes in the book. That's a lot, right? That's a good start to start with. But anyways, I wanted to do episode 10 because we all know that February is the month for women, or International Women, which, by the way, I salute all you hardworking women out there. And, of course, this episode is dedicated to all the women in horror. So you have the scream queens, the babes, the ones that kick ass. So I had to dedicate an episode to this. And what better time to do it than now, right? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on it. Now, before I get started, I'm going to let you know, this podcast show is usually a half hour. So there is some names I'm going to leave out. If I do leave anybody out, as far as like special names, just let me know in the comments below, and I'll give a shout out to them as well, because, the horror movies wouldn't be what it is today without, women kicking ass in it, right? And you'll find out as my thoughts later on in this episode. But anyways, let's get started. So, women of horror. I love the fact that they celebrate a month for that. You know why? Because women, for sure, make the horror films go. They kick ass, they build up the storyline, and it's more interesting with the women. And more entertaining, honestly. It really is. I know that kind of sounded a little sexist, but I'm not trying to be sexist here. But anyways, it's, for me, I personally I look at it this way, and I'm going to tell you right now. Would movies like Your Next would be just as good if you had, instead of a female character, a male character? Probably not, Because with the movie Your Next, it was based on, one of the brothers that she was with. You find that out at the end, that's a twist. But anyways, she's with him. They try to get all the family together for a reunion, and then they kill them off one by one. And then at the end, you find out that she's actually a badass. She knows, all these little tricks, how to put the boards with the nails, how to beat the shit out of the killers and everything like that. And it made it interesting. It really would, But it's the fact that because, she was a woman kicking ass, I was like, whoa, okay, this is cool, If the tables were turned, I look at it this way, it wouldn't be as entertaining. It really wouldn't, because then if it was turned like that, to me, it's more like an action-packed film, more of a thriller. And that's my point that I'm trying to get across here, because there's a lot of, women actresses that kick ass, and a lot of them get credit. Some of them don't. You really don't even think about that, Obviously, we all know the main ones, the Scream Queens. I'm going to start off with the one that really started it, Janet Leigh, Jamie Lee Curtis's mom. Without her, she basically built, the Scream, everything like that. And if you think about it, if you've never seen the original Psycho in black and white, go back and rewatch it, because I went back and watched it, and my God, she was Psycho. Other than Norman Bates and, I can't even remember his freaking name, Anthony Perkins. She basically was the person carrying the whole film, really, if you think about it. And just the fact that she just developed horror into this new genre, it pushed everything to what it is today. It really is. And what's funny is that Janet Leigh's daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, carried the tradition. And we all know Jamie Lee Curtis from Halloween, obviously. Halloween 1, 2, H2O, Resurrection, where she gets killed off. And then now they're rebooting it and her coming back, but they're going to do it where it's after part 1. So part 2... and all the other sequels don't count, I guess. Something different. But I consider her a Scream Queen because not only did she have the chops to do horror films, but she also did, a couple comedy films, things like that. Later on down the road, as she got older, she did some of those films. But right after Halloween, she still kept doing horror films. She did Prom Queen. Prom Queen was one of my other favorite ones because it was very suspenseful, very built in. It was more of a, not a psychotic, but more psychological. You know what I'm saying? And that was what's really good about it. And I salute her because, she was kick ass into it as well. She went toe to toe with Michael Myers, and all the actors and actresses that have gone against him, they've all fallen victim, So salute to Jamie Lee Curtis for kicking ass. Another one, y'all know I had to put this. I mean, my name is SaWGuy. I had to put Shawnee Smith. Now, who is Shawnee Smith? She's the one who was in the jaw trap in the first Saw film, Amanda. And I think that she is a badass because after the first one, you see, okay, she's the victim. Then afterwards, in part 2, she's back. It's like there's that twist in it. Like, why the hell is she back? Then they show like little glimpses of her cutting herself, kind of saying, okay, well, she fell back to her old ways. And then at the end of part 2, you find out it's a twist. And then in part 3, she's just this complete badass babe who just, she's doing most of the traps and everything for Jigsaw. And, she just made the whole Saw trilogy series, the original 3, really pop, because it was all about her and Tobin Bell, and they had this whole love connection kind of going on. I think they kept it platonic. That's what I was trying to go for, but, maybe it was a little bit more. But anyway, she made that movie interesting, the whole Saw series, because of her character. And what a lot of people forget is that she was a big star in the 80s. She was in, Who is Harry Crumb, which is kind of a comedy with John Candy back in the day. But she was also in the remake of The Blob. And that was one of my favorite remakes that was ever done because she was so badass. I mean, basically, she was a schoolgirl, didn't know much. And then towards the end of the movie, she's carrying an AR rifle, shooting the blob while it's freezing. I mean, you can't get more badass than that, Fighting blobs and then kicking ass and building traps, right? So, Shawnee Smith, I salute you. Happy Women's Day. Happy International Women's Month, I should say, not day. It's a whole month of celebration. It's something new to me. I've never heard of it until recently. So I was like, oh shit, I have to do this. Another one that I have to put on the list that I made was Heather Langenkamp. She was the one who played Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street. She was the original girl in the first one. She didn't come back in the second one. Budget cuts and everything. They want to do a different storyline. But she came back in the third one in the Dream Warriors, which is still everyone's favorite. And at that time, when it goes from the first to the third, she's already more adult, more grown, know how to kick ass, knows how to fight Freddy, and basically builds everybody who knows how to control and manipulate their dreams. She basically creates them into Dream Warriors. What sucks in the film is that, she went dying as a hero because she basically thought everything was all done. Freddy Krueger mind tricked her and just, But she still came back for the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise because they did the Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I think that was part 7. And well, anyways, what they did with that story is that they made it so it's like the original Freddy Krueger was just a one and done, and it was just like, what if Freddy Krueger was real in real life? How he would affect things. And the whole story goes is that they were rebooting it, and she was having nightmares, and then she met the real Freddy Krueger. And it showed that, even though she had been through it before only in movies, but in this version, she basically was just a badass because she knew what to expect. She wasn't going to take shit from anybody, And the fact that she was an overprotective mom, I mean, just made it like, whoa, okay, okay, I can see this going on because, women are empowered. They're smart, they're strong, and I respect that and salute that, right off the bat. SaWGuy always does. Another one, everyone forgets about her a little bit because, she gets lost in the shuffle. But Neve Campbell. Everybody remembers Neve Campbell from Party of Five. That was her first work that she started. But I will always remember her because she was in Scream and she was also in The Craft. Now, I'll get to The Craft in a second, but Scream, that was another big thing that really changed everything because 90s, everything sucked in the 90s. Like, it wasn't, that was a downfall where there was horror films, but they weren't as good. But, Wes Craven decided to make Scream and created Ghostface, which is basically two horror fanatic guys. And they go on a killing spree. And basically, she was the main character it centered around. And it showed how she was just this innocent girl. And then you see the transition where she goes from the first one to all the way to the fourth. How she's grown. How she becomes more badass. Like, okay, the first one, she's a teenager. She overgoes everything. She survives it. Part 2, now it follows her. And then basically part 3 had to do something with, like, she had a stepbrother she didn't know about. And she was still kicking ass. Part 4 I just loved part 4 how they did that because she comes in as a badass and it's like, okay, well, what the fuck is going on? Da 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 da. And she still just kicked ass like she always does. So Scream, I salute her work in that right off the bat. But I didn't get back to The Craft. Now The Craft, I like that one because you had 4 different variations of actresses. You had Fairuza Balk. She was kind of like the odd one in the movie, but she's always played those random kind of roles, so it fit her. You had I don't know the name of the 2 other actresses, but she had another one in there, and then you had the young schoolgirl who just moved from out of town, and then of course Neve Campbell. Neve Campbell, I would say she was more of a supporting role on that one because of the fact that she followed everything that they did, but she still was one of those badass witches, and there was just the crew of 3 of them. Then they, bring in the outsider, which was the new girl. And the whole story goes about how they believe it, they don't believe it, they get powers, and then they find out at the end that the new girl was the one who was the most of a witch out of all of them. And that was a pretty damn good movie for what it was, especially in the 90s. Because I think that came out right after Scream, after the first one. Maybe I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, quote me on it. Put it on the comments, because I believe it's like 95, 96, around the same time, But I salute that movie, Women of Horror Month, for sure. Another person that I have to talk about, well, another woman, I should say, Jennifer Tilly. Jennifer Tilly, she didn't do really horror movies much, but she became in this iconic role by being Chucky's wife in Bride of Chucky. And she just owns that role. She just epitomizes everything of being badass, Basically, in that one, Bride of Chucky, she finds out, where he is, all the parts remaining, that she finds out how to do the voodoo curse to bring it back, and she looks damn good in it. And she still looks good now, it's like, whoa, okay. But she basically was just this rebel badass, gothic kind of chick, and there was a little bit more to the story why she brought him back. She brought him back because she wanted to try and start a relationship and do things like that. And, I salute to that. I really do. Because, that's what basically made the whole storyline, Because I've seen Bride of Frankenstein, and it's similar to it, but, it's different. How do you say it? Different eras. It really is. But I salute Jennifer Tilly because she kicks ass. And she's still on Family Guy, playing Joe's wife. But, they made her a badass on that too, So, a lot of these actresses are still going good and doing strong, Another one of my favorites, I met her in person. She's a sweetheart. Danielle Harris. Who's Danielle Harris? She is a total badass since day one. She started off in doing Halloween 4 and 5. And she was basically Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter. This is how the story went. She was Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter, and she was adopted in part 4. And in part 5, basically, so she lived with this family. She knew of her mom. She just didn't know much because they basically phased off Jamie Lee Curtis's character. But the whole story surrounded her and how Michael Myers wanted to come back and kill her because you find out in part 6 he's cursed, and the more family members he kills, the stronger he gets. So she's been kicking Michael Myers' ass since I think she was about 8, maybe 9 when she started that role, And then a lot of people think, oh yeah, you do it as a kid, you kind of don't want to do horror films. No, but she came back. She really did. And I was surprised. When Rob Zombie rebooted Halloween, she ended up being one of Laurie Strode's friends. And we all know in the original they all died, but Rob Zombie's little twist is that he made her survive, and she came back for Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And she was still kicking ass on that one. And my favorite role that she had ever done was when they did the Hatchet series. Hatchet was basically the swamp version of Jason Voorhees. So it's a swamp monster. He's exactly similar to Jason. He was all disconfigured and everything like that. But the story goes is that, her father and her brother were out there fishing. Victor Crowley, he got him. So she went on this, what do they call it? Like the grand tours all around New Orleans and stuff in the swamp. Shit hits the fan, and she ends up kicking ass. But a little note, though, she wasn't in the first one. She was recast to take over in the second, and then they did the third. I know Victor Crowley, there was a fourth one that came out. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know if she's in that one or not. If she is, let me know down in the comments, so that way I can double check it out. Always keep him busy watching horror films. I have to. But I salute for sure Danielle Harris because she's still kicking ass, still doing horror films. She does a lot of horror conventions, so if you ever get to meet her, she's a sweetheart, down to earth. One of my favorites. You know, she's up there. Another one that doesn't get too much recognition is Aaliyah. Everyone's like, Aaliyah who? The Aaliyah that was in Queen of the Dam, right? If you've never seen Queen of the Dam, it's kind of long and drawn out because it follows the book series of everything the Anne Rice Chronicles. But if you watch that movie, she played that role. She owned that role. But what sucked is that it was an unfortunate thing. She had passed away. It was a plane crash and stuff. She doesn't get too much recognition for it, even though it was just a one and done kind of role. But I still salute Aaliyah because she was badass in that movie. She really was. Kathy Bates, another one. Everyone's like, "Whoa, you threw a curveball with that shit. Why Kathy Bates?" I'm gonna tell you why Kathy Bates, because she's still badass. Not only is she still doing American Horror Story and still playing one of those badass characters, whether she's in Coven or she's in what was the other season that I saw her in that was really good? Freak Show that I love, where she's the bearded lady. But she's also done horror films on a lot of them. You know, she's mostly done, like, my favorite that she's always done out of any horror film has to be Dolores Claiborne, because of the fact that the whole story with Dolores Claiborne was the fact that she was a mother and a woman who was doing everything she can to take care of her family. And it was the fact that her husband was a drunk and he would beat her, and he was kind of like messing around with the daughter, you know, forcefully. And then the fact that she was dealing with all that shit, she still had to involve the fact that she was being a maid for this rich woman who basically dies right in front of her. And she has the whole world against her, the whole odds of things. But in this movie, she still was kicking ass. You know, she was still handling business, doing things that Kathy Bates does. You know, I know a lot of people remember her from The Waterboy, that foosball was the devil. You know, this is a horror podcast, but I know a lot of people are gonna remember Kathy Bates for that. But I will always remember her in Dolores Claiborne. I know everyone's going to give me shit, like, what about Misery? Well, Misery, I like Misery. She played that role as a psychotic woman really good. She really did. And the fact that James Caan was in the movie with her, they had the good chemistry. They really did. And that also brings back my point I said earlier in the beginning of this episode. How different would that movie be if Kathy Bates wasn't in it, right? What if it's some other dude and then James Caan? It doesn't have that same ringer. They have no chemistry. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't matter. You could put any kind of good actor at that time, and it still wouldn't be as good. Another one I have to go out and salute to. So, wait, Kathy Bates, salute you. Another one I have to go and salute is Cassandra Peterson. And everyone's like, who the hell are you talking about? Cassandra Peterson. If you're a horror fan, you know that name, because that's Elvira. And who's Elvira? She is the woman version horror hostess of Tales from the Crypt Keeper. So you have Tales from the Crypt Keeper that was kind of more generated for guys. And Tales from the Crypt Keeper was okay. You know, it had a lot of puns and funny things. But Elvira, she became an icon. She's more of an icon, I think, than the Crypt Keeper from the Tales from the Crypt Keeper. But when you talk about Elvira, instead of her name Cassandra Peterson, she was the horror hostess who basically got so famous because the whole story goes is that she used to host these movies on TV. And this was like mid-80s, late 80s, around that time. So she would host these movies, and then they play them on the TV with either, I can't remember if it was her, like on the corner, like a little shadow silhouette. But basically, they would have her commentary on these movies. And they were movies from like the 50s and the 60s, you know, the random creatures from Mars kind of deal thing. And it was just fantastic. I mean, that shit blew the water off, blew the lid off, you know? And she got so famous that she basically became an icon, a horror icon, you know, for being just this badass. And everybody remembers her for the poofy hair. And she had the long cut dress that you had a little slit on the side, and then, you know, a low cut, you know, V-top kind of look, blouse. And she got so popular, she had her own movie. I tried looking it up to see what was the name of the movie, but you know, there's so many credits to her for all these horror hosting shows and everything like that she's done. Well, horror hosting for the movies. And she also did some other stuff. She was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. A lot of people forget about that. She was the biker chick when he was in there, and he basically knocks over everyone's bike. They're talking about if they want to tattoo him and kill him. Then she comes out and completely non-Elvira makeup. She basically says, "I say, let me have him," you know? And she owned that role. She really does. You know, she has the chops, I think, to do other types of roles, but she basically built a legend, an icon with the Elvira character. So Cassandra Peterson, I salute you, you know, for sure. Women of horror, still kicking ass like always. You know, I want to also get into the other smaller roles that some other women haven't gotten recognized for, like Mila Jovovich. Obviously, she's famous for the whole Resident Evil series, and everyone gives Resident Evil shit because it's based off the video game. But, you know, you have to hand it to Mila Jovovich. She's still kicking ass. She was kicking ass in The Fifth Element, you know, which is a sci-fi kind of film. But she's always been kicking ass in it. I mean, just the fact that she was a random off character and she basically came on and was just kicking ass since 2001 when the first film, or 2002 when the first Resident Evil came out, and they carried her character over. So basically what the whole movies followed is they followed similar storylines to the video game, but her character Alice was in every single thing. And they kind of brushed away from it, like third or the fourth one they kind of brushed away. Then they brought it back and started keeping it more closely related to the games. And then they ended the series supposedly, but I think they'll bring it back. And if she brings it back, well, if she don't bring it back, but if they bring it back, she has to be in it. I mean, she is Resident Evil right off the bat. So Mila Jovovich, salute you. Betsy Palmer from the Friday the 13th, the original Friday the 13th, the first one. Now, that's one of my favorite women of horror actresses, and the reason being is because she made the whole Friday the 13th series. Her acting was just phenomenal, and not only that, it goes back to my saying again, I'm going to beat it like a damn dead horse, is if you had that role swapped and you had a guy playing that role, it wouldn't be believable. And hear me out on this, right? With everything that's happened in the first Friday the 13th, Jason, he was always being protected by his mom and everything. And most people will know that most dads are just like, you know, they get hurt, whatever, you know, do your own thing. Mothers, they tend to be very protective. And, you know, that's what made the role more believable, was the fact that she could play this protective mother and still kick ass doing it and take out all these camp counselors that were responsible for everybody, you know? And she played that role really good. Like, she made the Friday the 13th series. And if you think about it, if you put another male actor into that role, I don't think it would be as successful. I really don't, you know? It goes back to what I was saying with You're Next, with Sharni Vinson. She, not only was she just a horror babe, but she was the fact that she was kicking ass on it. So I salute her, and I also salute Betsy Palmer. Also, too, Sissy Spacek from Carrie, which was Stephen King's first horror film. The fact that he put in so much of his work into this first film, he had to get this character right, you know? And Sissy Spacek, she freaking killed it, you know? Playing Carrie and playing that, you know, that kind of innocent role, new to the world kind of deal, and then just, she gets pissed off because everyone just kept fucking with her in messed up ways, you know? And she comes back. I mean, Sissy Spacek, I salute you. You know, you don't get enough credit for what you did to horror film, but SaWGuy does. He knows. Another one for sure I have to go and give a shout out to, Linda Blair. Linda Blair, she did The Exorcist. I believe it was, she did the first one for sure. I don't know if it was the second or the third. It was one of those two. Quote me if I'm wrong. Put it in the comments because I know I'm probably wrong. You know, I only have 30 minutes, so it's just a lot of shit going through my head, right? But anyways, Linda Blair, her contributions to horror, what she did for Exorcist, still to this day holds up as one of the scariest horror films. It's got to be in the top 3, top 5. For sure, it's in every fucking top list. We all know that. And the fact that she owned that character of playing Captain Howdy, I think it was. Is it Captain Howdy? I think it was Captain Howdy. And the fact that she just played that role really good. I mean, it's just like, whoa, okay. You know, the fact that she can just, you know, not so much kick ass, but scare the shit out of everybody with her acting skills. It was just unbelievable. And I think she was only, you know, 10, 11 at that time, but still kicking ass. And the sequel to The Exorcist, I never really follow the sequels just because it's like, okay, like, how do you continue the story with that, you know? But that's something I got to go back and rewatch. I know. But, so, Linda Blair, I salute you. I tried to look up the actor's name. All these notes, I'm going to show you. All these freaking notes, I forget, right? But anyways, I have to salute the actresses that were in I Spit in Your Grave and some of those other brutal horror films that they did. And I'm going to be straight up on this, not sexist or anything, but that shit was brutal. What they did and how they did the story about the fact of I Spit in Your Grave. The fact that here this girl's from out of town, she comes in, she meets these weirdo people, you know, and the fact that they break in, they basically, you know, have their way with her. And the fact that I wouldn't say they glorified it, but they showed real life. Like, that film was just like, what the fuck? Because shit like that can't happen. I mean, look at the society we live in today, you know? But what made that film really stick out to me was the fact they showed how badass these women were. Not only the original actor, but also, well, not actor, actress. Not only the original actress, but the actress who played in the remake, because she did the first remake and then she did part 3. I haven't seen part 3 yet, but I heard that one was good. But anyways, the whole story goes is that after, you know, these men had their way with her and tortured her in ways, she comes back and just beats the shit out of them and takes them out one by one. You know, and I always remember the original one because of the fact of there's a scene where they didn't recognize her, so they're taking a bath together. She basically grabs scissors and cuts his manhood out. I was like, what the hell is this? You know, but just the fact that she was just badass at how she could do it. Like, hey, you know, after all the shit she'd been through and the fact that she was still a badass that still can get away with it, that's just, whoa, mind blown, you know? So I have to salute that because not too many people would ever take that type of role and to deal with that shit. And honestly, you know, they really wouldn't. But, you know, my whole point in this episode, I know I probably missed a lot of them out there, a lot of people I didn't salute, but I'll put it in the comments, y'all remind me. But my whole point that I wanted to say about this episode was I want to salute all the women of horror. Not just the ones I mentioned, but every one of them. Because they all make horror films just that much better, that much more entertaining, that much more believable. You know, they really do. And I always go with that notion, like I said, and I'm going to say it again, what if the roles were switched, you know? Would they be as entertaining? Would they be as good? Would they be as believable, you know? Case in point with Friday the 13th. If it was a father instead of a mother playing that role, it wouldn't be believable. It really wouldn't. I mean, not at that time at least. Maybe now, but not at that time. You know, same thing with You're Next. It would be an action film if it was a guy instead of a woman doing that, you know? But it becomes a horror film because, you know, she was kicking ass. And the fact that they played her off as this vulnerable character and then she wasn't so vulnerable, she knew what the hell she was doing and kicking ass, you know? And a lot of these films and a lot of these women actresses, they don't get the credit as scream queens. When I hear someone say, oh, this person's a scream queen, this person is a scream queen, I think to myself, I mean, some roles, yeah, I could see because they were iconic. And other ones, I'm like, well, they're not really a scream queen. There's another word for it that the horror community has been coming up with. But I strictly say they're just women of horror kicking ass. And I say they're a horror babe. That's what I say, you know. Horror babes, they're they've done some kick-ass roles, but they haven't gotten that credit of doing Scream Queen yet. I don't know, it's all fishy. Everybody else talks something different about it. But for me, I salute to all the women in horror films because of the fact that they make it believable. They kick ass. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a guy, you know. I love the fact that, you know, one scene that popped in my head was just the fact of, like, how they try to make it so vulnerable, you know, and like in Psycho, you know, or if not in Psycho, there's also, like, what movie did I watch the other day? It was on TV. Jason, The Final Friday, Jason Goes to Hell. They made it vulnerable in the beginning, how this woman cop, she was going in the shower, and all of a sudden the lights go out, and then Jason tries to go after her. And they made her, like, vulnerable, but she wasn't that vulnerable. She wasn't stupid. She came back and knocked him or moved him or whatever, and then she ran out and then led Jason on a chase to where he just got into the middle of a firing squad and took it out, you know? But the fact that they, like, kick ass just always makes it more entertaining. For me. This is all my opinion. I know everyone's going to have different opinions of things, so I'm not trying to get all political here. This is a horror podcast, right? But anyways, I love the fact that they still kind of continue it a little bit. You know, you have The Conjuring with Vera Farmiga. She's basically still kicking ass and you know, taking numbers with the freaking Conjuring series. She's also in the Psycho TV series, which was really good, you know, or Norman Bates is what they call it. Kathy Bates, she's still doing it, still kicking ass with American Horror Story, like I said, you know. And, you know, a lot of them don't get credit. Like, they really don't. Especially Kathy Bates. I mean, Kathy Bates, she's got the chops to do all different types of films. But my favorite to always see her in is in a horror film. Like, if they had a new horror film coming out, you know, next year, next week, you have all these women of horror together. Kind of like what they did with Death House, where they have all these horror actors and actresses. Slurring my speech a little bit. But I like to see an all-women one. That'd be a badass. And then they just basically take down, you know, this main killer. Or kind of, not like Avengers, nothing like that, you know, but kind of basically a big horror film where you have all of them in together and they're just kicking ass. Like, that, to me, I'd be the first one in line to go see that right off the bat, you know. But my salute to this episode. I'm glad I did this episode for episode 10. It was a cross between doing this and something else, but then when I heard that it was Women of Horror Month, International Women Day, I had to bring this out there. I really did, you know. They don't get enough credit, but they're getting the credit from the SaWGuy. So all you guys that have done some kind of work in horror film and kicked ass in it, SaWGuy salutes you. I'm going to still keep watching, still being entertained. And that's all I got. Yeah, so we survived episode 10, y'all. See y'all next time on episode 11, all right? Take care.